that is competent. Since 2016, University of Muhammadiyah Semarang received accreditation B from BNPB, which became a turning point of hard work and concrete steps of University of Muhammadiyah Semarang. University of Muhammadiyah Semarang always cooperation with various parties, but domestically and abroad, as a form of implementation in carrying out its role at campus that has international orientation. Unimus has been collaborating with various institutions in Asia, Australia, Europe, and America. University of Muhammadiyah Semarang is committed to form human that has good integrity, that is academically, spiritually, morally, and technologically advanced. The participation of international orientation in serving to the nation also appears in its vision, being university that is excellent, good character, technological basis, and international orientation. Through this vision, mission, and great aspiration, University of Muhammadiyah Semarang is committed to be a leading university in various fields, strengthening graduates' competence, improving human resources, and sustainable society services. Besides, Unimus has realized a healthy campus and friendly environment, and always holds on in religion and Pancasila values. University of Muhammadiyah Semarang has built various representative facilities to support academic and non-academic lectures. Unimus has 8 faculties with 23 programs as follows: Faculty of Nursing and Health, Faculty of Public Health, Faculty of Medical, Agriculture. Faculty of Engineering. Faculty of Economics. Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences. And Faculty of Dentistry. University of Muhammadiyah Semarang has reached achievement at national and international level through various units of students' activities that become an inseparable part of the university.
Unimus is a great place for studying. You will find a very welcoming environment outside and inside of the university, making you feel comfortable to study, to have fun with your friends. You will also find very diverse and various offer of programs.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh สวัสดีค่ะดิฉันซูฟิยะห์เดราเซมาจากประเทศไทยอยู่ปีที่1เทอม2คณะศึกษาศาสตร์เอกภาษาอังกฤษซึ่งดิฉันเลือกที่จะเรียนที่อูนิมุสเพราะอูนิมุสให้ความรู้ทางด้านสายสามัญและก็สายศาสนาซึ่งสอดคล้องกับวิสัยทัศน์ของมหาลัยว่า excellent technology based and international conception วัสสลามุอะลัยกุมวะเราะห์มะตุลลอฮิวะบะเราะกาตุฮ์ขอบคุณค่ะ
University of Muhammadiyah Semarang is committed to achieve a brilliant future and generation that is ready to serve the nation and country. Unimus, a university for the excellent. Muhammadiyah Semarang has built various representative facilities to support academic and non-academic lectures. Faculties with 23 programs as follows. Faculty of Public Health, of Medical.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we cordially invite you to be seated at the available chairs because in a few minutes, the opening ceremony will proceed in no time. Thank you.
Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Economics, Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, and Faculty of Dentistry. University of Muhammadiyah Semarang has reached achievement at national and international level through various units of students' activities that become an inseparable part of the university.
For studying. You will find a very welcoming environment outside and inside of the university, making you feel comfortable to study, to have fun with your friends. You will also find very diverse and various offer of programs.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh สวัสดีค่ะ ดิฉันซูฟิยะห์เดราเซมาจากประเทศไทย อยู่ปีที่ 1 เทอม 2 คณะศึกษาศาสตร์เอกภาษาอังกฤษ ซึ่งดิฉันเลือกที่จะเรียนมาที่อูนิมูสเพราะอูนิมูสให้ความรู้ทางด้านสายสามัญแล้วก็สายศาสนา ซึ่งสอดคล้องกับวิสัยทัศน์ของมหาลัยที่ว่า excellent character technology based and international conception วัสสลามุอะลัยกุม
The Honorable Distinguished Speakers, Rector of Universitas Muhammadiyah Semarang, represented by the Dean of Faculty of Foreign Language and Culture, all participants, and distinguished guests. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We would like first of all to say thank you very much for gathering here and welcome to the third English Language and Literature International Conference, Reimagining New Cyber-Based Research in English Education, Literature, Linguistics, July 11 to 13, by Alivian, the student of Universitas Muhammadiyah, Semarang.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ayyuhalladzina amanu idza qila lakum tafassahu fil majalis تنفسخوا في المجالس فافسحوا يفسح الله لكم وإذا قيل انشزوا فانشزوا يرفع الله فانشزوا يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات والله بما تعملون خبير يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ناجيتم الرسول إذا ناجيتم الرسول فقدموا بين يدي نجواكم صدقة ذلك خير لكم وأطهر فإن لم تجدوا فإن الله غفور رحيم. أأشفقتم أن تقدموا بين يدي نجواكم صدقات.
Now Unimus has 27 programs in 8 faculties. And now it is gratifying to note that the agenda of this conference covers a wide range of fascinating topics related to English language and literature. Thus, my appreciation goes to all invited speakers, Dr. Mark, Prof. Nababan, and then Dr. Konwiba, and we're going to wait for Dr. Faiza Idris, a good contribution to the world, especially in our region. And my big gratitude also goes to the sponsors of the events, the committee, all participants, as well as the students who kindly give contribution to this conference so that these events can run successfully. And we also hope, ladies and gentlemen, that all of you can participate well in this conference and have a pleasant stay in Semarang. And we also pleased that you can also give your thoughts, your comments, your criticism on this seminar and also the facilities in our university. Hence, it will be useful for us in the future to create a better events. And kind of seminar like this. And finally,
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the next agenda of this function, which is the first plenary session, we would like to invite you to have some refreshment snacks in the next room for 15 minutes from now. So please be back at 9:20 after the coffee break for plenary session 1. And all distinguished guests and also the invited speakers are invited to proceed to the transit room. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the third English Language and Literature International Conference. This is the moment that we have been waiting for plenary session. And the first plenary speakers will be Assistant Professor Konwipa Punpun PhD from Khon Kaen University, Thailand, who will talk about language testing and assessment, and Professor Mangatur Nababan PhD from Universitas 11 Maret, Indonesia, whose expertise is on translation. With Mrs. Diana Hardi as the moderator.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to this third Ellic seminar at Universitas Muhammadiyah Semarang. And today I'm Diana Hardianti as your moderator. So today in this first parallel session we will have two speakers, Mrs. Dr. Konwipa Punpun and Prof. Nababan. Before the presentation begins, allow me to introduce the speaker. Okay. Our first speaker is Assistant Professor Dr. Konwipa Punpun. Ms. Konwipa Punpun is an assistant professor and the head of Center for English Language Excellence at Khon Kaen University, Thailand. She is also the Vice President of the Thailand Association of Applied Linguistics, and she received her PhD in Applied Linguistics from Northern Arizona University, funded by Fulbright Scholarship. Her research interests include second language assessment, corpus linguistic, discourse analysis, and EAP and ESP pedagogy. Her recent research projects include validity of an academic English language test for Thai graduate students and enhancement of Thai Generation Z students' communicative language ability using an innovative, contextualized teaching model, task input, genre assessment. Mrs. Punpun will deliver a presentation entitled Learner, Corpora, and Language Testing and Assessment, Application and Challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Assistant Professor Dr. Konwipa Punpun. The floor is yours.
Selamat pagi. สวัสดีค่ะ Oh, selamat jantidang kantan. Okay, am I good? Yes, thank you. Well, welcome to my talk. It is my honor and my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this conference. I'm very excited. I'm gonna do my best on my presentation. So my presentation is about learner corpora and language testing and assessment. I would like to talk about it in terms of application and challenges that I have found at my university. Okay. Anyone know about learner corpora? Do you know corpus? Have you heard about corpus? You do your research about corpus? Yes? Can you raise your hand a bit? Corpora, corpus. Yeah, good. Well, so I'll firstly introduce to you to a corpus and a learner corpora to those who are not familiar with this field. And then we'll talk about a little bit about corpus linguistics and the key concept of the corpus linguistics. And move it from the corpus linguistics a bit to the use of corpus in language testing and assessment in general and in Thailand. And also, I will give you some kind of an example of a study at my university. Okay. So first of all, Sinclair defined the corpus. He's like a father of corpus, right? Defined a corpus is a collection of pieces of language that are selected, first of all selected, and put it in order according to the explicit linguistic criteria in order to be used as a sample of the language. So in the early stage of corpus linguistics, they talk about selection. They focus on criteria of choosing the text and also the sample to represent the language as a whole. And later, Bible talk about corpus. Bible, which is my professor, very simple person, very short definition. A corpus is a large and principal collection of natural text. He really cares about authenticity of the use of the language, right? And then later, McAnary and Tono in 2006, they talk about corpus in terms of both written and spoken genre or text in a machine-readable form, which sometimes can be annotated. You can put parts of speech into the corpus also with the use of the technology. So he's a lot into the genres, different genres of the language and the applicable of the technology into corpus. So the key consideration for the text in corpus, so the text would be machine readable because it's very hard, right? Because do you know general service list? Are you familiar with the vocabulary general service list in 1953? The time that computer has not really been popular yet. Yeah, they do manual, they type instead of using downloading things, So at that time, the machine cannot really read the text, but they type manually, Can you imagine typing so many books into the computer and then run and even count manually? How many times the word "the" occur in your speech? How many times do you use the word "salamat pagi" in a day? Right? So this is you have to do the count for that. So the text should be authentic. Authentic means you use the language in your real life, right? You're not pretending or make up a conversation. Like in the textbook, sometimes they said corpus-based books. That means they draw the language from the bank of data that they have and put it in your textbook. Something like that. So that's the corpus base, which is supposed to be authentic. The text that you choose, of course, we cannot analyze all texts in the world, all of your speech. We need to sample your text, just like a sampling method in your study. So the text should be a sample of or a representative of a particular language or language variety that you would like to study. Okay. So why we use a corpus? Is it good to use a corpus to study? Well, sometimes the intuition alone is not enough. Can you answer is however always replaceable by nevertheless? When you write your paper, Would you choose to use however or nevertheless? Maybe if I'm bored with however, I'll use nevertheless. But native speaker, is it the same? It depends, right? So your intuition sometimes cannot tell how to use these words. So you need to draw the patterns, you need to learn from the context, from the authentic texts, right? So you can tell, okay, in this case we use however, and in that case we use nevertheless. Would you use think of or think about, for example? So your intuition may be not enough, right? And native speaker intuition is unreliable. That's what they say. Many times when we ask our native English teachers, how do you use, why don't you use there are? Many people in this group. I heard you said there's many people in the group. Which one is correct? There is or there are? Yeah. In our grammar book, they said there are. It's correct, right? Because it's followed by plural nouns. But you sometimes said there's a number of people in the room. In reality, native speakers use both sometimes, right? So that's sometimes maybe native speakers cannot really explain, oh, we use that because we use it, right? So instead of asking that, you can go online, get some authentic text and look at that, and you could get the answer on your own. You know, the word hate, for example, is it referred to hate like this here, usually, or the head of the department? What do you think? Hate appear in our daily life as the word head here, or the head of the department. We don't know until we go online and do the corpus analysis, right? Because the data will tell us. Well, it also helps answering questions of usage. Sometimes the word actually. Do you use the word actually? You think it's common in spoken or written language? Spoken, okay. What about exactly? Maybe written, maybe spoken. Let's see. So you can use corpus to, answer these kind of questions that you're not sure with the use of the language. Okay. So when we use a corpus, because probably we can sum up with the 3 areas of reasons here. Corpus-based approach shows authentic of the real text, right? And also the computer-based can help you, do the data online, something like that. And with the data of frequency, it's a quantitative data that you can rely on, because most of these occurs in spoken, for example, or in written words, something like that. So there's so many kinds of corpus, but today I will talk about 4 major criteria that define corpus into different types. The first one, written and spoken. And the second one is a general language purpose and specialized language purpose. Plain text and tagged text. And native speaker and language learner corpora. The first one, very easy. Written corpus, a collection of written texts. Or spoken, a collection of spoken texts. The first corpus is Brown corpus, which is a collection of written text in everyday use. So this is a standard corpus in American. So it is from the American camp, American English. And Lancaster, Oslo, Burton corpus is another famous corpus, written corpus, which is actually they kind of built LOB in order to be comparable to the Brown corpus, And later in 1990s, there's the Brown and FLOB, which is an updated version of the Brown and the LOB. These are very famous, and you can use it for free, actually. Every corpus linguist use Brown as a reference corpus when you would like to compare the use of language produced by Indonesian students with the standard corpus. The spoken one, which is very hard to collect because you need to transfer the speaking, right, the spoken. You transcribe the speaking into text, written text. But we still consider it spoken corpus. Right now, you know TED Talk? Yeah. In the past, you have to transcribe TED Talks first into the written text. But right now, with the use of the machine, Wordsmith tool, you can just upload the video and then it kind of, do the transcript for you. Very easy. The spoken corpus, Lancaster, which is the famous university in doing corpus linguistics, they have their own corpus, spoken corpus there. And the Can Code, which is Cambridge and Nottingham corpus from the UK. Santa Barbara corpus of spoken American English, and Michigan corpus of academic spoken English. So if you would like to, listen to lectures in the American university, you can access MyCast, and they have a lot of scripts about the lectures from the professor there. And Wellington corpus of spoken New Zealand here. Another corpus which contain both spoken and written is COCA, Corpus of Contemporary American English. There's corpus from a lot of American shows or series or movies, newspapers there, talk shows. So you can access it for free, COCA. General and specialized corpus. The general means general language we use in everyday life, which is Brown, British National Corpus, and American National Corpus. Specialized means you have a specific purpose to collect your text or corpus. For example, Guangzhou Petroleum English Corpus, they collected the text from the petroleum textbooks, something like that. And the Hong Kong University Computer Science Corpus, you can tell corpus in computer science. And also some acknowledgement corpus, a collection of all acknowledgements in the thesis. And blog authorship corpus. This is the collection of posts by a lot of bloggers in the world, and it's free to access. Very interesting, really. Air traffic control corpus. Air traffic control, we would like to know what should be the language that we, can use to communicate correctly, right? Because if you are at the air traffic control, you have to use the correct or precise words in order to communicate, right? Or you can do some call center. One of my friends, when I study English at my PhD, he is from the Philippines. He did a corpus in call center. Filipinos are very famous in terms of being a person who talks to you on the other side of the phone, especially in the US. So they collected corpus from these call centers.
So plain text means if you collect the corpus, this is an example of a piece of text, right? A text. Usually you type. If your student don't type, you need to type it for them. Right? But this one is a plain text, only text is there. Tag text means you put part of speech after each word. The words studying, for example, the red one is the part of speech. BDG means verb. Gerard, can you tell? History. NN means common noun. Don't worry, computer can do this for you. You don't have to mark it on your phone. You can put it in tagger, we call tagger, and they will do it for you. Okay? Very useful, right? And And there's famous taggers there. You can go there and you can use it for the first and the third one for free. The second one is not free. You need to buy. Claw is very famous. Tagger, part of the tagger, developed by University of Birmingham. Lancaster. For Sweet Tools and Tag Ad, which this is quite new, Tag Ad, you can use it for free. You just upload your files and they will tag for you. So, native speaker versus language learner Cobra. Usually, native speakers Cobra would be from the US, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. Right? We consider as native speakers. Learner Cobra would be Cobra, which is a plural focus. Cobra of a collection of texts produced by language learner, second or third language learner. So the learner corpus is the collection of the language or texts produced by language learners. Who are the language learners? It's not only have to be only English language learners. If I study Bahasa, I can be Bahasa language learners, right? You can collect a corpus of Bahasa. 2. And in wordsmith tools, there's a tagger for Bahasa. Bahasa alphabet. Because you use the same alphabet as English. Right? So you can tag Bahasa alphabet in wordsmith tools. But in Thai, we don't have the same alphabet, so it's very hard. So in our country, we have another Thai tagger. You can use to tag Thai. It's easier to tag English because a word can be a boundary of words, right? Because you have a space before any word. Is this similar to in Bahasa? You have one word, space, and another word. But in Thailand, words are together. Yes, words are together. If you have a pause, that means end of the sentence. You have to figure out which is the word on your own. So it's very hard to type sentences. So the language learners from, according to Kashu, very classical definitions of the language learner are those whose language is not either their L1 or official language in the country that they have the provided English. So this is considered a language learner. There's some examples of English learner opera here. For example, the first one is very famous and a lot of researchers use this in their research, International Focus on Learner English, or ECLE. The L1 of the writers here are from so many countries in Asia, including Indonesia and Thailand. And there's like a Poland one from German, you can tell. The one that I would like to recommend is the IGNAL, the last one. This is quite a young international corpus network of ASEAN learners of English. So only ASEAN learners produce text or essays, and then they're collected by the Japanese researcher from Kobe University, Professor Ishikawa. Why do we have to use learner corpora? Do you usually consider your students' language? I mean, will you pay attention to your students' English language production, either in writing or in speaking? Yes. Can you analyze anything from your students' production? Yeah. Maybe translation, about that. Can we use corpus in doing translation research? Yes, another type of, you can collect Bahasa corpus incomparable with English corpus, and you can do comparable study with the two corpora because in the program you can put one, corpora as a reference corpus and then do analyze the other one up to the standard of reference corpus. So the learner corpora usually at the early stage, early day, they use it to study second language acquisitions, to see inter-language of the language learners. Okay, to see do they have kind of factors, what are the factors that influence their production of the language, especially L1 transfer. Okay? To identify what respects learner different from each other, especially the high proficiency and the low proficiency one. Okay? Or to compare the use of our students' language with native speakers. Do you think Indonesian students use the word however a lot more than native speaker? We tend to use conjunction a lot, right? When we write, for example, first, second, third, finally, furthermore, moreover, right? If you compare, for example, these kind of connectors with native speaker, you probably found that we overuse these words, right? Because we learned it from the grammar book. When we start talking about the first thing, use the word first. But actually, there's so many ways to talk about it. Right? So that's the second language acquisition comes to play. The very popular one is English language teaching, using learner corpora for language teaching, especially to develop pedagogical tools and methods. There's a method that is very, very useful for learning vocabulary or collocation of bundles of words called data-driven learning. I'll talk about that later. So the corpus linguistic is only a methodology actually, right? Only a methodology that helps you analyze actual language used in natural texts. You can use a large and principal collection of natural texts on the basis for analysis. Or sometimes you can use smaller corpus to study some particular features of vocabulary of the student. Corpus linguistics makes extensive use of computers, utilizing both automatic and interactive techniques. Depends on the quantity and quality analytical technique. Actually, it's only the tool that produces some output. But the thing is, how are you going to discuss or integrate the results? So, as Michael said, the good of corpus-based investigation is not simply to report only the results, but to explore the importance of the findings of the results for learning about the patterns of use. When you analyze a corpus, what should you consider? What's the criteria to look at? A lot of people, since corpus linguistics seems to be a methodology, so a lot of researchers use corpus linguistics in combination with SLA, English language teaching, even ESE. They would like to explore what words are used a lot in forensic science or air traffic control. What are the chunks or phrases that we use a lot in this kind of corpus as for ESE? Or how do doctors report in their report, medical report? Do you think the language will be the same that we use in our daily life? Of course not. Okay? This is medical university. Okay? Do you teach medical students English? How do you teach English to medical students? Like, can they write a report? in English? How do they communicate with patients in English? So that the result from the corpus can help. Some common use of some spoken language or written language. And also in this course analysis, the corpus linguistics seem to be the first step of doing this course analysis. And also testing, which is the key element today. I'll talk about that later. So Barlow mentioned that the common purposes of people to use corpus linguistics would be to highlight the importance of lexicogrammatical resources, to reveal grammatical features, for example, like reporting verbs from the medical reports, associated with grammatical constructions, to complement the textbook language. Some people analyze the language in the textbook. Are they appropriate for my students' level? To examine textbook and course materials, to explore learner culture. The key analysis, which not the all analysis, but the key one would be focusing on lexical, like you can analyze single word, collocations, in which word come together with the target words, and the lexical bundles, the words that usually appear together. You count the frequency, the range of words, the word combination, or the typical use of the words. Or you explore grammatical features and range of grammar. The two big companies in testing, TOEFL, IELTS, they do research in order to validate that test and make that test reliable. So a number of research focus on using corpus in order to confirm or inform the validity. For example, the first one, Biber talked about language use in university. He kind of analyzed language use in university in America. What kind of language used in lecture room, in consultation with the American supervisors, or even in a cafeteria? And they use the input or the corpus of university language to be the input in the TOEFL test. Okay, so the language from the corpus, the common language, would be considered when they write the test in TOEFL test. That's long-term. Similar thing, IELTS have funded a lot of research to validate their test. This one, they would like to investigate the development of grammatical range and accuracy in the speaking test. They analyze the speaker's speech for errors in order to see in which level, in which band, how many bands are there in IELTS? 9. Which band produce what errors? To help the rater, kind of, okay, if this kind of error happens, that means these test takers are quite not very good because they make small mistakes or some kind of global errors or local errors. So this is an example of corpus studies in language system. Study using learner corpora. That's a few. To develop tests, you can have the line and do the close test. Which word are you going to blank? You need to choose, right? So you probably choose the most common word or the most frequent word in your test. To examine the features in a particular text, like investigate models used in service encoders. Because when the call center people, when they talk, they have to be polite, right? So they have to use a lot of models, what kind of models they use. To compare high and low scoring essays, to find features, to compare distributed process in ICLE and Locus, which is a program produced by American students. quite become famous, getting a lot more attention. The very, very familiar one is to develop a word list. What is a word list? What is the most common word that appear in psychological science, psychology, to develop a word list? And then you use the word list to be kind of a framework to design activities or materials. Vocabulary profile in textbook, we analyze to what extent general service list words occur and academic words occur in high school text or in university ESP materials, because in ESP sometimes we develop our own materials for science students, for medical students, and for agricultural students. So we need to consider what kind of words we should focus on. And the connotations is sometimes we're not going to teach them only one word, right? The word home or house, or TV, television. When you would like to watch TV, you have to turn on or open. A lot of Thai students use open the TV. Open the TV. Because we learn open as a single word. Mean the same thing as turn on in Thai, mean ปิด. So we learn open is ปิด. Instead of learning open the door, open the window, right? And then turn on the TV. If we teach our kids using collocations, words that should appear together, that would help a lot instead of teaching one single word, right? So it has come together, not open one time, TV another time, turn on another time. So they mix and match. Open the TV, something like this. So collocation is very useful. Now, phrases in political news. Sometimes when we read materials, we have to spend a lot of time, like very long sentence, right? Sentence in academic or technical text, it's very long. Actually, there's only one word. The rest of it are noun phrases. If we can teach students how to, identify this is the noun phrase look like, you can help them in reading as well. So we study noun phrase in political news in other ESP texts. Recording verbs and lexical bundles. A lot of people are interested in using analyzing lexical bundles. Data-driven learning. This is we call competence lines. You see it? The competence lines mean if you would like to let your students study the word effective, sometimes you just tell the meaning, right? Effective means it's very direct teaching method. But if you let them figure out by themselves, what does it mean? How is it used? It's like playing a game, right? Let them figure out by themselves. Probably not, you said no. Effective. What is the common noun come after the word effective? You see that? Right, so you can teach them how to figure out this kind of thing. This is data-driven learning. Only 5 more minutes? Yes. Really? I have got to myself yet. So I'm going to start very quickly. So at my university, there is a lot of students, about 14,000 students, and about 10,000 graduate students. We need to screen our graduate students into the university. So we develop English proficiency cascade called University Academic English Language Test. And they include reading and writing. Reading and writing. I would like to talk about the writing and how I use it. The question would be similar to TOEFL IBT. Right? may disagree with this and that. Scoring scale, because at first we adapted it from TOEFL IBT writing scale. Right now we would like to revise it to be our own. So that's why we are doing this kind of research in order to see the language use part. So in order to pass this one, you have to reach band 3 and 4 for master and PhD respectively. If they don't pass, they can study English courses provided by our university. Last year, almost 3,000 test takers, graduate students, took the test. Only 32% of them passed the reading part, and 26% passed the writing part, which is very low. So we would like to look at what's the problem with the writing part. So we look at the lexical profile and grammatical features only, but there's other criteria which we need to do more research to support the other criteria. And then we compare the use of grammar and vocabulary in different texts. So you can see we divided into 5 bands based on the student proficiency. Band 5 here, only 9% get band 5. And band 5 students produce a lot more writing than band 1, which is low. Right? This is quite normal, right? Because students at the low ability level have limited knowledge of vocabulary and grammar. So this is example band 5. Students, totally different. So we use instruments here to tag, to do vocab profile, and to do the writing process. And vocabulary profile, from about 100,000 words, there are only 5,000 academic words. I mean, occurrences in this essay, and a lot of general service words. So you can see, higher students tend to produce general words and also other kind of words more than low-level students. That means they have a lot of knowledge or ability to produce a language. Grammatical, then 5 tend to produce adverb. This is the only feature that's very distinctive from other bands, because they would like to talk about that, to modify a bit about their feelings. Then 2 and band 1 only produce noun, singular noun only, general preposition, adjective, and lexical verb. Lexical verb based form, that means they don't know how to change the verb into past tense, future tense, I mean other tense. You summarize. That's perfect. Very good. Test takers in high proficiency produce more language. At low level, of course, they produce less language because they have limited knowledge. Academic words were used more by the test takers with high proficiency level than low proficiency level. Adverbs were used a lot. Vocab and grammar only in band 4 and band 3 are quite similar in terms of types and number of vocab and grammar. So, to differentiate band 3 and band 4, maybe we need some other criteria that we have to pay close attention to, not only the language use as that. So, I'm going to apply this kind of finding, which is only part of a big, project in developing our scoring description to refine the description to be more accessible by the reader, to be more understandable by the reader, to be more concrete. In some way, this kind of study addresses the validity of the finding and of the writing scoring criteria in terms of the focus on the language use, which is part of student ability. The challenge of doing COBRA in testing and assessment is, from the data collection perspective, very time-consuming in transcribing the. Actually, the student writes and handwrite, so we need to type. Accuracy and transcripts A lot of errors have been found in the learner program. So sometimes tagger cannot tag. If they misspell the word, the tagger cannot read it. They just guess. The machine is moving. So that is from the Cobra analysis for in a big project. What we are going to do right now, next after this, is to gain a lot of larger corpus, and we're going to do analysis. This is always supposed to show up. And you have to explore the input of the reading part. This is the reading part. So we're going to analyze the reading inputs in the reading part. Okay, I think that's probably it.
So this is called a very, very nice presentation. So what about let's give one big applause for this wonderful. Right. So some people will just think about the use of corpus linguistic for testing and enhancement, and also can be used for another research field. So this time for the second presenter. We have here the second presenter is Professor Dr. Andus Mengatur Nababan, Master of Education, Master of Arts, Doctor of Philosophy. Please give us a big applause. So if here I have a problem in mentioning the CV that he gives to me, because Nababan gave me 16 pages of CV. So should I read all the CV? No. Right, so this is quite long, so I'm just going to introduce Prof. Nababan as a Professor of Translation Studies, Faculty of Cultural Science, Universitas Semarang, Surakarta. And a little bit of his CV, let me open my notes here. So he's got the doctorandus in Universitas Semarang, Surakarta, and Master of Education in Reading and Language Arts, School of Education, University of Houston, USA, and Master of Art, School of Applied Linguistics, majoring in Social Linguistics in Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, and the Doctor of Philosophy in School of Applied Linguistics, majoring in Translation in Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. And since 2006 until this present, he has been conducting countless research in translation published in journal and proceedings. So today, Prof. Mengatur Nababan will deliver a presentation entitled Creative and Critical Thinking in Translation Research. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prof. Nababan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I'm going to talk about in general translation and particularly about the creative thinking and critical thinking in translation. My presentation, I have two portions. The first part of my presentation will be presented by me, and the second part will be presented by Diana. She is my PhD student. Now she's doing a research on translation. And I gave from my CV, a very long CV, on purpose because I want her to read the CV, so it will take a long time for her to do it. So I just need, yeah, because I just prepared a very short presentation just consisting of 5 slides. And this is not something new because last week I have presented this in State University of Yogyakarta. Anyway, are you familiar with the term translation? So, can you define what translation is? That is?
Translation is the kind of activity that we translate one language into another language.
So you said that it is an activity.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's okay. So what kind of activity do you mean?
Translate.
Translating. Okay. Because there are two kinds of activity. Something that you can see, but in another case, translation also cannot be seen because it happens in your brain. Do you agree with me? Okay, so translation is a process, right? The one is tangible, another one is not tangible. But when you have said that it is translating as an activity, it is tangible. Because you can see the activity, you can see the translator membuka kamus, open the dictionary, or something. Because you said that membuka pintu, open the window, or turn on the window. What about open the dictionary, open some dictionary?
I open first.
Check.
Look at the world dictionary.
The most natural one for the next video videos. Check.
Look up the word. Particular word.
Okay. Consult your dictionary.
If you have psychological problems, consult the
And
dictionary.
you usually say, we open our dictionary.
But that's just opening. You really should go the extra step.
Right. Okay, now let's look at the definition of translation. And everyone knows that translation involves at least 2 languages, right? The ones the short language, the second one is the target language. But it is also a generic term, because it may refer to the product and also to the process. When it refers to the product as the process, then, as I said to you, that it may be tangible or intangible. That's why translation also is called as a cognitive process and also called as the black box. And what about creative thinking and critical thinking in translation? When you are critical in translation research, then you can see the strengths and the weaknesses of a research, of particular research. If you are critical in translation practice, then you can identify at least that, say, the short text has weaknesses or defect or not. But when you are talking about creative in translation practice, then you have to produce something new, because the original text belongs to the old one, because it is probably published or produced in the past. Then if you are talking about critical thinking in translation practice, you have to be able to detect the weaknesses, the defect of the original text. Really big. So creative thinking is looking at something in a new way. If you are creative in translational research, you should apply new approaches. We have some approaches in translation, linguistic 1 and translation 1. Sometimes, people like doing or apply pragmatics. Sometimes they use critical discourse analysis, and some of them also use systemic functional linguistics. That belongs to linguistic approach. But some of them also are interested in applying translation approaches such as scopus theory, relevance theory. What else? Downward-based analysis. But that belongs to linguistic approach. And also polysystem theory and multimodal theory. Then, if you are critical in translation studies, you see that you try to look at, as I told you try to look at the weaknesses or the strengths of previous studies. When you focus on this, then you focus on the research gap. You try to examine something new. So when you are engaging in creative and critical thinking, when you take into account of the strengths and weaknesses of something, and you look at it in a new way. Next. Then you should also consider the target of your research, or the orientation of your research. You may choose between the product-oriented and the process-oriented. Or you may combine process-oriented and product-oriented. A process research examines the problem-solving process. It has to be translation strategies and decision-making process. In some cases, it is combined with the product research, in which you should talk about the translation planning, because it has something to do with the product. And you also look at the impact of the studies on the quality of the translation. Next. Whether you study is related to the product or to the process, you need to consider it creatively and critically. This is the main reasons why usually the supervisors reject your proposal, because you are not creative in doing or in writing your proposals. You don't so clearly say there is a step in your proposal. Next. A creative translation is open the possibilities of using particular linguistic tools I have explained to you just now. In our university, we have done this. Some of my students are coming up here today, like Ronald. Ronald is studying about what? Ronald? He's enjoying about what? What's the topic of your research?
On translation using SFL.
What is SFL?
Systemic functional analysis.
Oh, he is trying to apply SFL. Examine what?
Examining reduction on.
Examine reduction and?
In subtitling, to be precise.
And
translation precisely on subtitling.
with the icon is try to examine subtitle using multimodality theory.
Using also subtitles.
Using also subtitles. In Jana, using nothing. Using nothing. Okay, next. Next. Now we take a look at this what do you call this? This dichotomy. We have a dichotomy in translation. We have foreign translation, and we have investigation. That's the dichotomy of theology of translation. We also have the dichotomy for translation method and translation techniques. And if you choose this one, on the other side, then we can say that you belong to a very creative translator. But if you decide to use literal or borrowing or cut, then you belong to non-creative translator. Kira-kira begitu ya. Next. Thank you. The second part is the practice of how to apply creative thinking and creative and critical thinking in translation practice by Diana. Yeah, absolutely. You have to
So allow me to change the position from a moderator into a co-speaker. Right. So when Prof. Nawaban already speak about the creative and critical thinking in translating a novel, now I'm going to talk about how to apply this creative and critical thinking in translating a novel. So this is the novel that I've been translating. So I put my position as a translator. I translate Heart of the Darkness by Joseph Conrad, and this is a very old novel because it was written in 1899. So, can you imagine how me, as a translator, have to translate this very old book? So, the first time, when I do this as a process of translating, let's see what Nita and Gabriel said about the process of translating. So translating consists of reproducing in the receptor language the closest natural equivalence of the source message, first in terms of meaning and the second in terms of style. So what I'm going to say here is the closest natural equivalent. So the first step, me as a translator will do source text analysis. How I'm going to do this? I'll use the top-down method to get the feel, to get the atmosphere, and to get the style of the novel. And the most important thing, I have to do the top-down method just to get the message of the of the novel. And because this novel is written in 1899. So can you imagine the word 100 years ago? Yes, the word choice. That's become my problem. Why? Because can you imagine 100 years ago we used this word, or maybe right now we don't use that word anymore. So the second problem that I face is the register. I'm not familiar with ship. I'm not familiar with sea. And of course, this novel is talking about imperialism and slavery. That's why I have to make small research about what is slavery, especially in Africa 100 years ago, and how imperialism in Africa 100 years ago. That's I use the research to define the word that I use to translate. And Here, how to apply this creative and critical thinking in normal translation. I made a mistake here. I should cover this, the target text reader, and let's focus on this. Alright, so you got the data, right? Internetnya penuh. Let's try to do this, yeah? So I'm facing the sentence, the Nelly, a cruising yawl, swung to her anchor without a flutter to the sails and with plus a rest. So, this is the first problem that I face. First is the yawl. Alright, you may access your dictionary. Let's find what is a yawl. Please? So when I access the dictionary, the term yawl is translated into Indonesia. So I feel sorry first for those who don't speak Indonesia. This is the translation from Indonesia, yeah? So the first yawl in Indonesia is joli-joli. What is joli-joli then? Joli-joli then? Nyanyian. It's a yawl. But when we see here, the English translation to master fore and aft, rigged sailboat with a mizzen, blah 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 blah, it gave me a headache. So, we as a translator have to speak, have to think creatively and critically how to explain this yawl into Bahasa Indonesia. How? To the reader in Indonesia to know what is yawl in here. So, I try to find out the image. This is the yawl. So when you become a translator, what are you going to translate this into Indonesia? Seperti? No? Apa? Pralayar, this is the corpus. Pralayar? Yes? No?
No.
What?
Well, I have to consult a maritime dictionary
Please consult.
to make sure
Okay.
that I know all the kinds of ships available in the Indonesian language and not just kapal layar, which is a generic sailboat.
Yes. As fishermen too. And this is, this is also, so this is me when I see this image, this is I'm doing. So I imagine that in 1899, so it's going to be, yawls will be like this. So this is a specific perahu at least. We have two masts in here. So to make it easier, I translated the Nelly and cruising yawl, kapal layar the Nelly. Is there any objection of kapal layar? Belum. Kapal layar the Nelly. And once again, I have a problem to translate. Maybe I should change. I should move over there so that I can move anywhere because since I'm the speaker. Yeah, bro. So let's see here. I have the problem with the swung to her anchor. Please help me to consult your dictionary. What is swung in Indonesia? What is the kosakata? What is the translation for swung in Indonesia? Swing. Mengayun. Terus? Berayun. So the anchor is jangkar. So when I say jangkar, jangkar itu dilempar, bisa? Diturunkan, ditambatkan. Which one? Dilempar. First, I translate this into melempar jangkar. Then, my friend who are familiar with the ship, they said, how big is the ship, Diana? Oh, yeah, how big? So, what's the point? If the ship is big, so the jangkar will be this big. This big. So you cannot say melempar jangkar. That's the creative thing and the critical thing of translation. So I said, So when it was not said, it means that not menurunkan jangkar, but also
menambahkan jangkar. Menurunkan jangkar. But this time because it's not moving, it's not moving, so it's menambahkan jangkar. So also try to make the style, the same style with this, because this is a literal text. The navy a cruising yawl swung to the anchor without a flutter to the sail, and it was a rest. So kapal layar Denali menambahkan jangkarnya beristirahat. Layarnya tenang tak berkibar. I try to be sastrawan. Do you think I am successful in here? Or I feel successful, yeah? In front of my professor. Right, so the second time. The second translation that I made. Okay. This is I have to translate a foreign word, adieu. I don't know how to say it in French. Is there anyone help me how to say it in French?
Adieu.
Adieu, like that. Thank you. Adieu. So, the actor here is Frenchman, so he used mixed coat. So he used adieu. So I'm going to like this step in the target text. I'm not going to change this into English to see that this is the French. He do the mixed coat. Mixed coat or code mixing or code switching? Code mixing, I think. Oh, thank you. Because that's the professor of linguistics here. Right. And here, so he do the code mixing. So I'm not going to change adieu into English. So I'm going to make the translation into adieu. How do you do in English? Say, goodbye. Goodbye. Adieu. So my people, bahasa Indonesia, people in Indonesia, or the reader in Indonesia will know that the adieu, even though it is in French, they know that the meaning of adieu is selamat jalan. Have the same meaning with goodbye. That. This is also, we as a translator have to think creative. How to keep this adieu so that my reader in target language know, oh, this is the French for greeting. And this is the metaphor. I felt somehow I must get there by hook or by crook. So metaphor, for some people, if they do not know that this is a metaphor, they will translate it literally. So will you help me to assist what is by hook and by crook in the literal meaning when you consult your dictionary? What is by hook and by crook? Where's a hook? Crook. Where's a hook? A hook. What can you find in your Google image? A tile. Oh yeah. So this is the image. By hook or by crook. So I know that but I cannot translate it into literal meaning. So I have to translate it by metaphor meaning. So this is my translation. I felt somehow I must get there by hook or by crook. Aku merasa aku harus ke sana dengan cara apapun. I should find the metaphor in Indonesia, but luckily I didn't find a metaphor in Indonesia. So is there anyone here can help me? What is the metaphor in Indonesia? You can do it by any way, dengan cara apapun. Tadi ya, berarti sama ya. Ini nggak ada metafornya. We don't have metaphor for the same by hook and by crook. Oh. Now, the last one, the source text. This is I found in the novel, and he was devoted his book, which were in apple pie order. This is definitely not a literal one, because you see, the context is not there. First, he talked about the books, and the second, he talked about the pie, apple pie. So I think this is not literal meaning. This is the apple pie. Can you see? So this is also the metaphor. And this metaphor means dari terlihat dari cara dia menata buku-bukunya. Sangat rapi, sesuai urutan. This is
Though I try to create, to think creatively, I cannot still find the same metaphor in Indonesian to have the same meaning with which word in apple pie order. So I try to translate it into the meaning. Bukunya sangat rapi, sesuai urutan. Is there any metaphor in Indonesia for the same like this? Orangnya rapi sekali. We have rapi jali. Okay? No, tidak ada ya. So this translation is the best, I think. Say it the best in front of my professor. Your professor, yeah. So, alright, this is the end. How to apply this creative and critical thinking and doing the translation. Thank you very much. Now, since I'm sitting here, I beg to be the moderator. Am I good, Professor? Alhamdulillah. Right. Now we are in question and answer session. I will open three questions. Yeah, three questions for this first session of question and answer session. Please mention. What you have to mention? Please mention your name and state. To which presenter you address your question. So, any question, please? Please raise your hand. Yes. Three, please. 1, 2, and one more. 3 over there. Okay, like that. Okay, what's your name?
Thank you. My name is Hari. I'm from Semarang, Bandung. I would like to ask Dr. Pompon two questions. I've been hearing about. I've been hearing about the use of corpus linguistics a lot recently, and I was just wondering of several things. Often when people they say they use corpus linguistics, they deal with mostly on the lexical level. And I was just wondering to what extent corpus linguistics can be used on higher levels at this. You talked about grammatical structures, but I was wondering whether corpus linguistics can be used on, like, in terms of style, discourse, whether it's possible in the analysis of what's available in the corpus. I'm not so much interested in, let's say, the frequency of the occurrences of let's say, certain words or certain idiomatic expression or certain grammatical structures. But my question is more on how, after, let's say, an evaluation, after you found out the certain patterns, certain semantic schemes that tend to occur in a learner's corpus, I was wondering whether there's a method, a specific method in which you could, based on the result of findings, design, let's say, a customized activity for a particular learner based on her particular corpus. It's possible, right, to make a corpus for one learner. Okay. In that case, so I was wondering whether there's an app. In our university, we use Moodle, which is an open source online platform, and because it's open source, I was wondering whether a certain corpus analysis tool could be interfaced with Moodle so that when students, a lot of our writing activities are online, so I was wondering whether if the tool is interfaced onto Moodle, I was wondering whether that it's possible for a student to have self-assessment on the kinds of writing that they've done and to see whether or not, like, as over one semester, they've developed in terms of the use of, let's say, more complex structures and a more variety of vocabulary.
Thank you, Pak Adi. So the second, you are listen to directly. Okay. The second question, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask for Prof. Nababan and beautiful words. So I have my name is Jaya from Madam University, Bali actually. So okay, I have 3 questions in here. So the first question is, what are the strategies that we can use so that, let's say I am a researcher and also a lecturer, so that I can master this critical thinking and as well as the critical thinking in trade translation actually, the strategies. And then the second question is that which one according to you, so which one is most difficult with creative thinking or critical thinking in trade translation? And the last question is, as we know that Khairul Anwar, I heard the issue that most of his works are from translation. So the question is, according to you, so, the work, the strategy that Khairul Anwar used, which one dominates between his critical thinking or creative thinking in doing translation for the project? Thank you, that's all my questions.
All right. Do you have any questions? Over there, maybe? So I think the answer is very clear enough, so there is nobody will answer. Do we have something for the question, maybe? Maybe we got the television for those who asked the question? No? I asked the committee to give the question one television, but I think it's right. Let's go to just 2 questions from Pak Adi and from Pak Jaya. The first question is from Pak Adi to Dr. Pupong.
Thank you. Okay. So 2 questions. The first one, is there any way that you can apply focus analysis into the Moodle? Okay. That's the first question. And the second one is how can we integrate focus analysis to exploring some kind of stylistics in this focus analysis?
Let's say whether we can design a customized learning activity for a particular learner based on that particular student's performance.
Yeah. So there are many ways to do that. Like I said, the key analysis is more about frequency because they would like to have evidence about is it worth studying this kind of word or this kind of principle. That only the springboard to other analysis. So you can use the information from the frequency to help you decide whether or not these students should focus on some particular area, or you should teach more about this or that, something like that. So in terms of using it in Moodle, you can design an activity that can encourage your students to use their critical thinking skill to figure out these, for example, these patterns, some kind of patterns that is used in by different authors if you would like to see the styles of the writers, and also to let them explore even their own focus, a collection of their own writing. They may collect their writing since they were in the first year until now, 4th year, and they can see the development of their writings through the chunks of language that they use, through the grammatical features of vocabulary that they use. That's the only small area that they can explore. You can design activities for them.
So
But we need to teach them how to use first the tools, which we call concordancing programs, because different programs have different functions that we can use. There are more than just doing the frequency inverters. You can count like chunks of words all together. You can look at particular phrases if you would like to. Or similar to what she presented, the word anchor. What is the co-occurring words that usually come with the word the anchor in the last like 100 years compared to now? You can do longitudinal study about the language that people use or produce. You can study the use of the language in the newspaper from 100 years ago or 50 years ago, and then compare it to now, something like that. So there's a lot of ways to go with that. We need to.
And the software do you know if the software can be interfaced onto Moodle? Like it becomes a feature of Moodle because other software can be,
I'm not sure. I haven't tried that, but at least you can put the link.
Oh yeah.
Okay? And then click this link or analyze this through this link, and then it's free. You can access anywhere. You can put it as part of your work and design the activity.
Thank you. Is it clear enough, Ari? Thank you. Now we come to second question from Jan. Please, is it correct? The strategy to master the critical thinking and the strategy for Khairul Anwar for the Putri? Okay.
But in order to be critical, you need to have a lot of information. You have to read a lot. In order to be critical in present business, for example, you have to read a lot about, research intentions. You need to process information about transactions. Otherwise, you say nothing. That's why usually an introduction of your proposal for example, you need to explain, to describe the weaknesses, the strengths of the previous study. The only way to do that is to read a lot. And you have to be competent. You have to be competent in the area. And what strategy that you use in order to be creative? I think that it's a practice. It's a practice. So if you write a lot, if you read a lot, I'm sure that you will be great translators and describe as what they are so hard. So if you have a problem, then you need some. Certain strategies is attempting a way to solve problems. When you are facing problems in translating a particular word from English to English, like, for example, goal, then you have to access the internet to look for the information needed to decide which one is the closest natural equivalent. Sometimes you do not find the problem, the solution, because, for instance, like the metaphor, by proof, or proof. We don't know that metaphor in class. But it doesn't mean that we cannot translate it into Bahasa Indonesia. So the best way is just to use, just to get the meaning, then express it in Bahasa Indonesia, literally. That's it.
Next, second section, should I answer? Yes, we have one question over there. One. And one more.
Thank you so much. I am Elena Villa. I am from the Philippines, in Universitas in particular, in Science and Technology University. I was listening to the study, and the way I understand, we have a very unlimited sources of information for the corpus-based study. As I understand also that in the corpus-based study, we need to consider also the theme. In a corpus-based study, we have to consider the theme of the corpora that we are going to use. To say, if we just have to consider, for example, in the translation, if our corpus is the translation of one text to another, but we don't have the theme to consider, that task might turn out to be difficult. So we can limit our task by identifying the theme of what material we are going to use. So what I'd like to add is, please consider the theme in a corpus-based study. Thank you.
Do you want to add something? This is about the theme. Actually, in every kind of research, you need to set a framework, right? So, like the qualitative is a methodology that can help you analyze the data. But if you set the theme or the framework, you have a clear purpose of doing this, why you're doing this, so you find it in the corpus-based studies.
Maybe one more question, just one. Is there any question? All right, time's up. Right, so we have a very interesting time with these two speakers, but I'm afraid this is the end of our presentation today. We would like to say thank you again for all the speakers for their informative and interesting talk, and to the audience for your active participation. Hopefully that this presentation will be beneficial for everyone. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Once more, give a big applause to our speaker. Thank you very much for joining this presentation. And for the speaker, please remain on the stage because we would like to present a token of appreciation. And we would like to invite Mrs. Jessica Maya Oktarani as the Dean of Faculty of Foreign Language and Culture to hand a token to our speakers.
you all, ladies and gentlemen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is also another moment that we also have been waiting for plenary session 2. And in this session, I'm sure the topic proposed will benefit us as a teacher to engage our students in learning language by employing technological tools. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's invite Mark Pfeiffer Selhammer, PhD from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and Associate Professor Faizah Idris, PhD from the International Islamic University, Malaysia, with Mrs. Jessica Maya Altarani as a moderator.
Okay, so everyone's still here, right? Okay, let's check then by give me one clap. Okay, if you focus enough, then the sound should be like in one note, yeah? One clap. Okay, one clap, two claps, three claps. How about 10 claps? Okay, so everyone is still here, thank God. Well, now we come to the second round, and after we listen to the corpus and also the translation, then now we're going to discuss furthermore on how if what we done in research applied in our students. And we already have distinguished speakers over here. We have Mark. He will elaborate more on how technological tools and everything around the students can be used as a tool to study, right? And she will also talk something interesting, which is about storytelling and how it is applied in our class as well. Yes. But before that, to make it more interesting, I'm going to set a rule first. Rule before speaking. Please put your mobile phone into silent mode, just to make sure that everybody is focused in the discussion. And then after this, we're going to invite Mark to talk for about 45 an hour to present. And then after that, we're going to have another 45 minutes or half an hour, okay, half an hour. And then after that will be followed by question and answer. Okay? So without further ado, let's invite Mark, or do you want to know furthermore about Mark first? Yes, no? Yes. Yes, okay. I have a bunch of documents over here, but if I read them all, probably until tomorrow. That's why I'm going to make it very short. Dr. Mark Pfeiffer is a lecturer in the English Language and Literature Academic Group at National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And he studied for the PhD in NEU as well. And then he also, from the US, the PhD. NUS, sorry, National University of Singapore, sorry. And then he also went to University of Hawaii for his master's degree. And then he has previously taught English languages and linguistics in variety of the university in Asia Pacific context, including Hawaii, Guam, Taiwan, and Japan. And his main area of research is issues related to language and identity, examining individuals' relationship with the various languages in their linguistic repertoires and the roles of these languages play in their lives. He has published articles and books in a variety of journals, including World Englishes, Journal of Multilingual and Multicultural Development, Journal of Asian Pacific Communication, Journal of Pragmatics. And his most recent work is a research monograph entitled Gender, Neoliberalism, and Distinction Through Linguistic Capital. Okay, without further ado, let's give big applause for Mark.
Okay, I think I will follow Diana's lead and be somewhat immobile, moving around a bit here. So today I'll be discussing a course that I taught previously, a course in which I used two technological tools, internet tools, specifically Padlet and Google Street View, to help students engage with the language that surrounds them. And by the language that surrounds them here, what I'm referring to actually is linguistic landscapes. Or actually a very broad conceptualization of linguistic landscapes. Can you all hear me if I don't bother you? Yes. Okay, sometimes it's best to discard technology. I'm more comfortable now. Okay. So, linguistic landscapes. The first use of the term linguistic landscapes was way back in 1997 in an article by Landry and Boris, where they define linguistic landscapes as the language of public road signs, advertising billboards, street names, place names, commercial shop signs, and public signs on government buildings. Much can be learned from the linguistic landscape. For example, the status and prestige of particular languages in particular contexts. That's something that linguistic landscape research is very good at revealing. Quote here from Landry and Boris, the predominance of one language on public signs relative to other languages can reflect the power or the relative power and status of competing language groups. So, something that the linguistic landscape does not necessarily tell us, though, it does not actually necessarily reflect actual usage of the languages, just the representation of these particular languages on signs, etc., in the linguistic landscape. And here in their quote, they speak, Landry and Boris speak of competing language groups. They were very much competing language groups that Landry and Boris were focusing on, because their context of examination was Quebec in Canada, where Quebecois French and English were very much in competition, especially in those days, still to some degree, but in those days especially. And so they were focusing on this tension between the competing language groups in the linguistic landscape of English and French in the Quebec linguistic landscape. And they characterized the linguistic landscape as an independent variable contributing to a group's ethno-linguistic vitality. Ethno-linguistic vitality is still, in linguistic landscape research, very much a primary concern. Diane Davinis and her colleagues said a bit more about this, saying the linguistic landscape signals what languages are prominent and valued in public and private spaces, and indexes the social positioning of people who identify with particular languages. And in this talk here today, I'll talk a lot about one thing indexing another, something in the linguistic landscape or something in a sign indexing something else. Here, by indexing, I basically mean symbolizing or calling forth, bringing to mind, symbolizing something else. So just like here we have a hexagonal sign, so even if we didn't have a word in any language there, what does this hexagonal shape in a sign, what does it index?
Stop.
Stop, stop, right. We all know that. Even if there are no words, the hexagonal shape in a sign indexes star. Yeah. Okay, so I'll be talking a lot here in this talk about one thing indexing another, certain elements of the linguistic landscape indexing this or that idea. So, since 1997, when Landry and Boris published their original linguistic landscape article, the literature on linguistic landscapes has really exploded. Very abundant and still growing literature on linguistic landscapes. Many edited volumes, and now there is a journal dedicated specifically and only to linguistic landscape research. Okay. And within this growing body of linguistic landscape research, there is quite a bit and growing literature on use of the linguistic landscape in second language teaching and learning. So these are just a few examples. Though a full list would go on and on, but these are a few examples of some of the more high-profile articles on the use of the linguistic landscape in teaching and learning. One of the earliest ones, the second one here, 2008 by Sinners and Gorder. In this relatively early article, in 2008, they identify 5 potential benefits of second language learning through linguistic landscapes. First, incidental language learning through the linguistic landscape text. Perhaps a bit, perhaps much, a whole lot, but to some degree, some incidental learning of both lexical items and grammatical constructions can be learned through observing the linguistic landscape. Next, pragmatic competence through analyzing text with different social functions. Practice developing multimodal literacy skills, because the linguistic landscape, signs, and the language of public spaces around us is increasingly multimodal. Multi-competence, developed as a result of multilingual input in multilingual linguistic landscape text. Some of you might be aware of Vivian Cook's proclamation in 1999, or his suggestion of using the term multi-competence instead of non-native speakers, defining this or characterizing the speakers in terms of something positive, what the speakers are in terms of something negative, something they are not. So multi-competence here, the fourth potential broad benefit of incorporating linguistic landscapes in the study and teaching of second languages. Then, finally, okay, the fifth benefit here, increased awareness of the symbolic power of language. And this is one that I'll be focusing on mostly here in this talk. So a little bit more on that, more specifically about that increased awareness of the symbolic power of languages benefit. They talk about how linguistic landscape is a powerful tool that can be used to help students notice multiple layers of meanings that are displayed in the signs language of public space. And the italics here for notice, they included that in italics in their original article. Also, Diane Daganese and her colleagues, they said that the linguistic landscape helps students to recognize the non-neutral nature of written communication, that it is, in fact, not neutral language necessarily. It's by nature non-neutral. Peter Sayer published an article in which he proposed the use of a particular linguistic landscape project for EFL students. And in this article, he looked at the meanings of English signage in a small Mexico town, a Mexico town where very, very little English was actually used by the people in this town. And as a result of this analysis, he identified a few different social meanings that he felt were being conveyed by the samples of linguistic landscape elements in the linguistic landscape of this Mexican town. These meanings that he identified, the social meanings, what he thought the speaker or the text producers were trying to convey with their choice to use English in the signs, were fashion, sophistication, coolness, sex, love, and subversive identities. And Sayer proposes that teachers in EFL context have their students take on the role of language detectives and go out into the communities and take photographs of various signs, elements in the linguistic landscape, English, signs that include English, or elements of the linguistic landscape that include English, and then categorize the instances according to the social meanings that they identify. Here, Sayer identified these social meanings in his analysis, but he was very specific to point out that you should not lead the students in identifying particular social meanings. Let them figure out what they think the social meanings are. Just start with the guiding question to them: why do people use English on signs in our community? And then let them determine what they believe would be the idea that the text producer wants to convey with the choice to use English instead of Spanish in this case. Or if you were doing this project here instead of Bahasa Indonesia, what social meanings was the author, the text producer, wishing to convey with the choice of English instead? So I arrived here in Semarang yesterday, intentionally a little bit early so that I could go out and explore a little bit and take some photos of the linguistic landscape here, trying to localize my talk here just a bit. So if we look at some of these photographs that I took yesterday, maybe we can identify some themes, or maybe we could determine the extent to which any of Sayer's social meanings apply to the photos of the linguistic landscape that I took. Maybe, maybe not. So here, does it convey sophistication or sex or love? Maybe coolness. Maybe.
Maybe hunger.
Could be hunger. Yeah. The social meaning. Why say eat? Why not makan? Yeah. So what social meaning is the text producer here wishing to convey? Have students question and maybe think of ideas. And here, sophistication is the text producer trying to convey a sense of sophistication with the choice of English in these examples? I mean, certainly, I guess this one is more trying to convey more sophistication than this one. Not to an extreme degree, yeah. So in some cases, certainly, absolutely, it could be argued that English is indexing fashion or sophistication, like in these examples, trying to convey a sense of glamorous fashion, glamorous sophistication. Here, it's kind of small to see, but it's a condo community, or a new condominium that they're trying to sell, I guess. It's from Paragon Mall. Yeah, this was in Paragon Mall. And maybe love or subversive identities here in this graffiti, in the use of my heart, which, you know, that any mention of heart indexes love, I guess. And any use of graffiti to some degree indexes subversive identities, arguably. So I'm going to be talking here today about my use of particular tools, technological tools, in my course that I taught at NTU. Study or having the students go around the community and take photos and act as language detectives. Certainly, that is something I did in my course as well, but the only technological tool that is used there, arguably, would be the camera itself. And we're supposed to be sticking to the theme here of technology here in this conference. So I'll focus on two other technological tools that I used in other activities for this module that I taught. So the module, the course here that I taught, the title of this course was The Language That Surrounds Us. It was a course that I've thus far only run once, only run this course one time so far. It was a general elective course open to all students at NTU, not just students at National Institute of Education, not just those trainee teachers, but anyone in the whole university could take this course. There were no prerequisites. So I had some students that were English and linguistics majors, but many other majors in the university were represented in my class as well. Some from sociology, some from communications, some math, some engineering. Quite a variety of different students took this class. And all of the students were already quite proficient English speakers, many of them having spoken English from infancy. So language learning was not an objective here for this course. These same ideas that I apply here, the same tools that I utilize, the same basic activities, could absolutely be used in courses where language learning is the primary objective as well, though. The very broad learning objective for this course, for me and these students, was, however, to enhance the students' critical awareness of the language that surrounds them in public space, public spaces around them. These are the specific learning outcomes for my course. First, to develop critical socio-cultural or sociological awareness, to develop a sensitivity to the connotational values of language, again, what they index, the different ideas that language choices index. Understanding the motives, uses, ideologies, and contestations of language that is deployed in public space. How or why, what are the motivations for a text producer choosing to use particular languages in their signs, and why might that be controversial? Why might that choice be controversial? Then discuss how linguistic, cultural, and social meanings are constituted in multiple modes through the language public spaces. So these were the specific learning objectives that I had for this course. And in the class, we started out at the beginning looking at very traditional kinds of conceptualizations of the linguistic landscapes, restricting things at the beginning to mostly public signage, not getting into other areas yet of things like soundscapes or tattoos, skinscapes. So at the beginning of the course anyway, just looking at the traditional notion of linguistic landscapes, public signage. But there were several different categories of public signage that we discussed, and this is a summary of those different categories. I'll go through each of them in turn and say a little bit about each here. First, the distinction between bottom up and top down signage. There's a little lag. Oh, maybe batteries, maybe. Okay. So top down first. That's where the sign initiator is a government agency, or a big corporation. Those would be top down signs, where the text producer or sign initiator, those responsible, government or big business. Then bottom up signs are where the sign initiator is a private individual, or maybe a private individual that is a small shop owner, or it could be an individual employee at the shop, perhaps even an individual employee at a store that is part of a big multinational corporate chain, maybe. So bottom-up agency here, in the case of these bottom-up signs here, bottom-up agency being employed by some employees, it seems. So here we have the Wendy's sign here, this part would be top-down, very top-down, big corporation. But this part, I believe, very bottom-up, something utilized by some perhaps disgruntled employee. Yeah. This one, and here we just zoom in on the bottom up, perhaps disgruntled employee. Vegetarians eat veggies. What do humanitarians eat? Often it's the bottom up signage employed by individuals where we get our most witty instances. Yeah. So here, back to Semarang. Yesterday, here in the city hall area, I found this Paparan's Pizza establishment or stand here. I was speculating here, well, maybe perhaps this bottom-up sign is attempting to index the top-down American corporation Papa John's Pizza sign.
It's a big corporation. Papa Ross is a big corporation.
Is it?
Yeah, so you have a more complex.
There's contextual knowledge I had no idea about. So you see, you need the context, which I didn't have in this case. Yeah. Okay, so that speculation is off. Okay, graffiti. We saw a few instances of local graffiti before. Graffiti defacing authorized signs or creating new unauthorized signs. I would consider graffiti the ultimate bottom-up linguistic landscape element. Unauthorized discourse that talks back to the authorized discourse. And in Landry and Boris's original linguistic landscape article way back in 1997, they identified two basic functions of public signage. First, to communicate a literal message, perhaps give information or instruction or persuade others of things. And the second basic function, to express symbolic functions like express power, express linguistic dominance, or to declare ownership in a language. And these symbolic functions are very often reflected in the size of a language's appearance in the text or their juxtaposition on the sign, what position in the sign they appear. So if size serves to symbolize power or linguistic dominance, what do we make here of the size of the English, not only size, but also saliency, being in a more standout red, easy to see color? Size and relative salience of the English relative to the Bahasa Indonesia, which is much smaller and harder to see. At this sign at the cinema at Paragon Mall. What do you make of that? Maybe they think, oh, well, Indonesians know how to behave. It's those foreigners that might be smoking and eating. Maybe. Perhaps. But then, the same phenomenon I observed in my hotel, in the sign next to the elevator, the lift. So, the English in bold and much larger than the much smaller, not bolded Bahasa Indonesia. So, of course, we have to take intended audience into account too, and figure that, oh, it's a hotel that surely does serve a lot of international guests. So maybe they're thinking such things, or again, maybe they're thinking, oh, Indonesians know how to behave. It's the foreigners, we have to really make it bold for them. Maybe. As for the juxtaposition of languages and signs, the relative placement of the particular languages, Skolin and Skolin stated that the preferred language in multilingual signage is generally at the top, at the center, or at the leftmost location. Your leftmost location. But then, in this article by McCormick and Agnihotri, they point out this example here, shown in this photo. An ideal instance where it's a multilingual sign with Hindi, English, and Urdu. An ideal instance in which each of these three languages can be considered placed in the preferred location. The Hindi, the left, that's one of the preferred locations. The English in the center, one of the preferred locations. And the Urdu at the right, because Urdu is read right to left. So making use of that fact, it seems ideal location for all three. The idea here that I want to convey is that the choice of language can index authenticity. Like here, for this example, even if you can't read the Arabic Jawi script here in this Malay Heritage sign, Malay Heritage Center in Singapore, just the mere use of this script has indexical power. It indexes authenticity for this Malay Cultural Center. And similarly, in Singapore, it is the simplified Chinese characters that are taught in the schools. But traditional Chinese characters are still often used in signage, especially in Chinatown, to, again, index authenticity. I'll turn now to the idea of look-alike language. Look-alike language is language that is used not at all to convey any kind of literal message, but instead purely for its indexical power, purely to make use of the symbolic nature of languages, the symbolic power. For example, the use of very often nonsensical English or French just to index cosmopolitan sophistication. And here we have a sign from a chocolate store in Tokyo. A chocolate store called Nina's Derrière. Anyone speak French? Derrière is? Yeah. It's a chocolate store. The meaning of derrière does not matter at all. The important thing is it's French. It sounds sophisticated because it's French.
Sweet and chewy.
Well, it sounds sophisticated for those who don't understand any French. Yeah. Which, again, we have to take audience into account. Not a whole lot of Japanese would know the meaning. Enough that Nina's Derrière can remain a popular chocolate store. Again here, don't choice I wicked want fun. Fun with two ends. No, it makes no sense at all, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is it's English text, it's English words. That's all that matters. This one, it might be this category or it might be the next category I'll discuss, but in any case, very suspicious supermarket in the sign. Maybe it doesn't matter what the meaning of that is. The important thing is we've got English on our sign. As long as the audience is not someone that understands it. Otherwise, it might be avoided in the supermarket. Very suspicious. So here, the use of the French, and back to this sign advertising the condominium development in Paragon Mall. The use of the French, Marquis de Lafayette, is surely here intended to index cosmopolitan sophistication. Then my next category of signage here, some signs, they very much do intend to be communicative, but are less than successful in carrying this out. And generally, that would be due to lack of proficiency in the language in which they're trying to make the sign for, or reliance on Google Translate, all too common, right? So a few examples here. Another category, signs that are trying to actively influence or impact the public's language use in some way, language management or language regulation signs. So one here from Brunei and two from Singapore. Until relatively recently, this was a very, very common category of sign in the Singapore linguistic landscape. So many language campaigns, the Speak Mandarin campaign, the Speak Good English movement. They've lessened They've really toned down the language campaigns now, but for so long there were so many of these kinds of signs in Singapore. So back to my course. We went through all of these different categories of signs and discussed them, and then throughout the course we had numerous scavenger hunts. So there were two kinds of scavenger hunts that I had my students do. The first kind were virtual scavenger hunts, in which I would give the students different categories of things to look for, and then in their table groups they would explore the internet looking for internet images that would be a good example of this or that category of public signage. Then non-virtual scavenger hunts, in which I would again give them a list of things to look for, and they would go out onto the campus in groups and try to find instances of this or that kind of sign, and take photographs of it, and then post their photographs as evidence to Padlet. And then they would come back to class, and then we would discuss. We would look at all of their evidence that they presented in the Padlet, and we would discuss their findings, their evidence. So, how many of you have used Padlet? Quite a few, quite a few. I love Padlet. I use it to some degree in all of my classes. And what I like so much about it is it's really so simple. It's nothing. It's just a blank page. But that's the beauty of it. It's a blank page that you can make absolutely anything that you want or that your students want. So here's a screenshot of my Padlet page here. So all samples of different Padlet things that I've done in different classes. Some of these from this class. So this is what I would do. For one of the internet scavenger hunts, I would display this slide here with the different categories: a top-down sign, a bottom-up business sign, graffiti, explicit language management sign, excluding Singapore because that's too easy, a sign featuring look-alike language, a sign intending to be communicative but not exactly successfully. And so I would include here both the QR code and the URL for them to post what they found. Most of the students, they had mobile phones at least. Some would have laptops or tablets, in which case they might just enter the URL, but with phones they would just scan the QR code. Padlet actually, students alerted me to this as a resource in micro teachings that they were doing in my class. Students started using Padlet, and I realized, whoa, this is a great thing. I can use that. So students turned me on to Padlet. So this is what I would do here for the internet scavenger hunts. Then when students posted their found photos to Padlet, it looked like this. And I set it so that it would scroll up or down here. But this is a screenshot here. This is from the bottom-up business signs category. A few examples they found from the internet. This from the explicit language management category. Examples from Bahasa Melayu, English, Swedish. From the look-alike language category, definitely look-alike language. No actual literal meaning is possible to get from either of these. And from the category of signs that intend to be communicative, but actually some problems with that. Meat, muscle, stupid bean sprouts. Then I would have the non-virtual scavenger hunts, where I would give them a list of things and have them go out on campus to try to find exemplars, photograph them, post them to Padlet. So for this one, I would give each group a handout with a particular QR code, particular for their group. And so the list here for things to find on campus included a sign that includes all 4 of Singapore's official languages, a bilingual top-down sign, it could be municipal, from government or commercial business, a bilingual bottom-up sign, a multilingual sign, top-down or bottom-up, any 3 or more languages, a top-down sign that positions the university in a particular way, a top-down sign that positions the university's students in a particular way, and an instance of graffiti, which, in Singapore, where you can be caned for graffiti, I thought this was a particular challenge for the students. I didn't really expect them to find it. Students found that on the NTU campus, it was indeed possible to find multilingual signage, but actually they really had to try hard. They really had to search for it. One group found multilingual English-Chinese signage on the bus, the shuttle bus that shuttles students around campus. And in this case, it wasn't a university sign, actually. It was a bottom-up sign that the bus driver himself made. And then this is from an e-recycling bin that had all 4 of Singapore's official languages in it. This project, looking for, or this activity, searching in the scavenger hunt around campus for instances of bilingual and multilingual signage, if the students didn't see the relevance of this as they were doing it, certainly a few short months later, they absolutely would have, because it made news, this issue. A few months later, NTU, the university, found itself embroiled in a controversy over English-only signage. Basically, one of the stalls, the food stalls at a university canteen, had been told by university officials, remove your Chinese from your menu board. You should have English-only signage. And the media got wind of this, and it really blew up. It became a huge controversy and made NTU look really bad. And so quickly, in no time, the president of the university comes out and says, oh, it was just a misunderstanding, we apologize, just a misunderstanding. So students, if they didn't realize the relevance of the issue when they were out doing their scavenger hunts and having some difficulty finding bilingual and multilingual signage, they realized soon enough here with this controversy. And some of them even found graffiti, even in Singapore. In this case, it was words that had been carved in a bench, and then the words actually had been kind of erased by scraping over. But this is the closest we can come to graffiti anyway, which was more than I expected in Singapore, where you can be caned for graffiti. Also, traditionally, linguistic landscape research just focused on stationary signage, not things that could move around. In traditional linguistic landscape research, researchers would identify one block or one area of the particular context they're interested in and said, okay, I'm going to count signs or the languages in signs in this block or this particular area, and I will ignore anything that is mobile, moving in and out of the block. Just basically out of convenience, I guess, because if it's on a vehicle or on somebody's t-shirt, then they would rationalize that, well, it can't be said to be a stationary instance of linguistic landscape in this emplaced block. But really, the truth is, even if something is mobile and transient, moving in and out, it's still an element of the linguistic landscape there, albeit maybe for just a brief period of time. And so we looked at mobile elements of the linguistic landscape as well. And this could constitute all kinds of different things, a huge array of different sorts of elements, like money. Money, it's a sign, definitely. Stamps, tickets for transit, leaflets, advertisements that are just handed out to the public. Product labels, signs on vehicles, including bumper stickers, books, magazines, newspapers, t-shirts and other clothing, tattoos, skinscapes, again. Okay, so for advertising, top-down signs on public transit, buses, trains, taxis, a lot of this. Most bumper stickers also do index particular identities of their car owners, like mother or parent identities. Parent identities or identities as supporters of particular reprehensible political candidates. Branded clothing, also, of course, the brand names and logos on branded clothing, definitely very prevalent elements of the linguistic landscape. They serve to index particular identities of their wearers. And you can, of course, bet that the big corporations involved in these brands and logos invested very heavily in the market research and promoting these particular indexicalities for their brands and logos. Absolutely. So the handout for the second campus scavenger hunt, focusing on mobile elements of the linguistic landscape, had them look for these things: signs on vehicles, top down and bottom up, signs on vehicles that include a language other than English, article of clothing with a brand logo or image, article of clothing that displays some message other than a brand logo or image, tattoo. And I told students too that unless you are completely, absolutely sure that you're taking a photo of someone's t-shirt or tattoo is completely inconspicuous, completely surreptitious, be sure to ask them. And sometimes when the students asked them, the people they asked were very happy to talk about their tattoos and explain, oh, I got this tattoo because this and that. It sends this message. So yeah, upon returning to class then, the students presented their findings on Padlet again, and in some cases speculated about the indexicalities. In some cases, actually, they had first-hand information from talking to the people with the tattoos and t-shirts about the intended indexicalities. Like for this tattoo, somebody they approached, the owner of this tattoo, it indexed for him his love of travel. It says, not all those who wander are lost. It indexed his love of travel, and it was also kind of in response to his parents' attitude that he was only traveling everywhere to put off real life, implying that he was lost. So real intended indexicalities with this particular tattoo, my students found out. Okay. Ethnographic linguistic landscape studies. Traditionally, linguistic landscape research was predominantly a very quantitative affair, counting particular instances of particular languages in public spaces, counting them with an eye towards gauging ethno-linguistic vitality. In recent years, though, a different, more ethnographic approach has come to be favored by many linguistic landscape researchers. And this ethnographic approach employs more qualitative methods, photographing the signs and interviewing those who interact, those responsible, the sign initiators, but also those who interact with the signs or elements of the linguistic landscape in an attempt to really understand how the public engages with particular elements of the linguistic landscape. An example would be a recent study by Francis Holt and Helen Kelly Holmes, where they looked at a store in San Francisco's Chinatown called Abba's Department Store. It's a Scandinavian-themed store, a Scandinavian-themed tailor shop, actually, in Chinatown. And the owners are actually from the Middle East. They're not Scandinavian, but everything in this tailor shop is Scandinavian-themed. And so Holt and Kelly Holmes went in and spent lots of time with the owners of this tailor shop, interviewing them, taking lots of photos around the shop, and they got the full story. They got the full background, history, context of Abba's department store. It turns out that in the early 1970s, Singapore, being a port city, a bustling port, had a lot of sailors from Scandinavian countries. And so they set up this tailor shop specifically to attract those Scandinavian sailors. And that's why they started making everything Scandinavian themed. And that's why they called in ABBA's department store after the Swedish band ABBA. And over the years, even after there stopped being a lot of Scandinavian sailors in Singapore, it became what they were known for. Scandinavians would hear about it and come to this shop and send them lots of fan letters. And so the novelty of there being a Scandinavian tailor shop in Chinatown in Singapore really built upon itself. So they got the whole story, the whole background context. So in my class, the activity that I gave my students to focus on ethnographic linguistic landscapes. Of course, for a true ethnography, really, die-hard ethnographers would say, you have to spend at least a year in the field to really understand the context, really understand the particular culture. But, you know, we didn't have a year. My students had an hour and a half in class. So what I had them do, we went on Google Street View, and I told them to find a neighborhood that either their own neighborhood or a neighborhood that they've lived in the past or a neighborhood that they know very well. Go there and find, you know, looking around, driving down the street on Google Street View, find a sign or some instance that they already know the full context and history about. Perfect. And so I gave the students an example of my own here, exploring one of my old neighborhoods that I used to live in Singapore. I don't live in this neighborhood anymore, but I lived there for a few years. I knew it well. Going through this neighborhood on Google Street View, I found this sign. It's dated August 2016. You can see the date that the Google Street View images were taken. You can't see it the sign very well here, but this is the image, how it looks on Google Street View. The text here says, someone else is driving, I can daydream. And this sign was intended, it's from the Land Transport Authority, the LTA, the Singapore Land Transport Authority. It was intended to to encourage use of public transit, discourage people driving their own individual cars. Encourage riding a public transit with the message that if you take public transit, it frees you from the responsibility of having to drive. That was the intended message. But here you can see a different version of the same sign, that you can see it better here. Quite a few Singaporeans, however, interpreted this sign very differently from the way that the Land Transport Authority intended. They interpreted it as, these Singaporeans, of course, likely very frustrated with the rising cost of living in Singapore, interpreted it instead as some rich people are driving their cars, but I can only daydream about that, about owning one. Someone else is driving. Someone else is driving, not me. Yeah. I can only daydream about it. That's how many people interpreted it. And they wrote letters to the editor, to the newspapers, the Straits Times, commenting on this fact, commenting on Singapore's rising cost of living and how they'll never be able to achieve their dream of owning a car, this kind of thing. Leading a columnist, SM Ong, to write, and this is how LTA's innocent attempt to encourage people to use public transit turns into class warfare. So a bit of background, contextual background, the full story around this particular sign that I found using Google Street View. I presented this to students as an example. And I gave them this slide saying, post your brief findings on Padlet. And I told them here in this slide, I don't expect everyone to be able to find signs that they can provide a full ethnographic linguistic landscape analysis for. The value, even if you can't do it, the value will be in the search and your attempt to do so. I told them if we can get just a few good summaries, stories, and photos, I'll be happy. And I started them off here, giving them two examples. I just gave you, summarized a short one. I gave them one other longer one from San Francisco's Chinatown. but I gave them my post to start out with. And actually everyone, or almost everyone in the class, ended up with a good ethnographic linguistic landscape summary here, posted to Padlet to talk about. So, to wrap up here, Padlet and Google Street View, two completely free internet tools that can be easily used by anyone with internet access, or rather I should say, I guess, internet access in the classroom, to carry out engaging activities that position students as language detectives, that investigate the language that surrounds them in public spaces, either through scavenger hunts or Google Street View, and reporting their findings and analyses with the help of Padlet here. So that's all. Thank you very much. And a quick advertisement here. The deadline for abstracts is coming very soon. If you are able, submit an abstract to this conference in Singapore in December.
Okay. So we can see Mark again in that conference. Give big applause for him. Okay, after listening to how we as students as directive with Mark, now we're going to have presentation from Associate Professor Dr. Ellic. She is now as Deputy Dean of Student Affairs and Alumni, Kuliah of Education, the International Islamic University Malaysia, right? And she went to University of Nottingham for her PhD, and Leicester University for his master's degree. And she has been teaching since 1987. Yes, and in 2012, she was awarded as a winner of bronze medal in the Research and Innovation Exhibition in the University London. Okay, so transition. Thank you for
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm very good day. So I'm not going to take very long. What I am going to share with you is a project which I have done with my students, and my students are pre-service teachers. When they graduate, they will become teachers. So since in relation to the topic, so I have chosen one project. Okay, I think I'll just sit with my heels, and I think I'll be better sitting. No, I don't want to embarrass myself tripping down. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's move. Technology. Sometimes with technology, of course, it will help you, but there are many times that we need backup plans, right? Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about the project. The project is about how we use technology or different types of modes of instruments in storytelling, right? So we know that storytelling is an ancient practice, probably. During those days, our forefathers, they didn't have technology. What they did have was their voice. Thank you very much. They have voices and are very good at that. Yeah? And what if, let's say, probably you yourself, once when you were a kid or a little child, when you heard the sentence, "Once upon a time, there lived a king and a queen." So how would you feel? Oh, I want to hear more. And the two stepdaughters. Oh, no, that was a different story altogether. I mixed them up. No, the moral of the story is we are used to story. Probably, I'm just assuming that everyone is exposed to storytelling. But during those days, okay, our forefathers, they only had voices, and it's just orally, and it has been, it was passed down to the children and then grandchildren, great-grandchildren, okay? So, but now, we have technology, and I always reminded, at this age, I always reminded my students that, oh, you forgot, we have technology. Sometimes we have to remind them again and again, right? So let's look at this caption or this quote from Cope and Calantzis. So, and I want to relate the storytelling with multimodal literacy. So what is multimodal literacy? So from Cope and Calantzis, literacy, teaching and learning needs to change because the world is changing. I want to just remind myself, I always reevaluate the kind of teaching that I do in my classroom. What I use today probably is immaterial, or maybe it's no use in like time to come in a few years. For example, a few years ago, not a few years ago, probably 2 years ago, I used Kahoot a lot in my class. And then there came a time when I used Kahoot and the students, oh, not this again. You see? And we, as a lecturer, as a teacher, as an educator, you have to, not change, but you have to cope with the change, right? And today, let's say my son will come and, did you hear about Endgame? Oh, everybody went crazy about Endgame. I said, what is that? Oh, I am in a different world altogether. Yes. I said, I know that. It's Marvel, isn't it? Okay, so, we have to sometimes pretend that we know. Oh, you use that? Oh, yes, I did. Oh, okay, that's good. You are, in with technology. Sometimes you have to pretend that you know. Find out. Google is the master. Sometimes when your students are saying that, you think I don't know, I Google it. Oh, yes, I got the answer, right? So that, but of course, during teaching and learning, there are times that you have to ask the students to put away their handphones. In my class, it's okay because we do a lot of researching and searching, so they are allowed to have their smartphone and not so smartphones, right? So we are changing, and hopefully the way we do storytelling will also change, hopefully. Okay, people tell stories in many different ways. Do you remember back in those days, when did you first read a story? Do you remember? No? When you were in kindergarten? Did your teacher tell you a story? Okay, today children, I have a story for you, probably. Okay, probably in Bahasa or in Bahasa Indonesia, pada suatu hari. Okay, so the voice, the intonation is very important in storytelling. Do you agree with me? If you say once upon a time with all the facial expression, I am a drama queen. That's why I have a lot of facial expression. So I always tell my student, if you say once upon a time, what is that? I don't think anything because they are going to be teachers, right? So I am very particular of the way they tell stories, all right? So we have oral, we have writing, we have signs, okay? So we story tell using signs too, okay? So, and what is, sometimes, like I said, if you use one approach all the time, it may bore your students, right? So we need to have a different approaches or different mode of, teaching the same thing, right? So let me read this from Byrne and Wollstonecraft. Multimodality involves the complex interweaving of word, image, gesture, and movement, and sound, including speech. Now, let me ask you whether you have, I'm sure you have, in Bahasa, in Malaysia, we call it wayang kulit. I don't know whether that is, you still call it wayang kulit? The shadow of the puppet, the shadow puppet? Yes. Wayang kulit. So that, after the oral tradition, then we had a little technology. So we had that shadow puppet, and that is very important because in wayang kulit, through wayang kulit, you need to vary the tone. Sometimes only one person tells the story, but different voices, different tones, So I think I marvel at we call it the tukang karut is the storyteller. Okay. Yeah, oh my God, tukang karut is Dikir Barat. Okay, dalang, that tok dalang we call it. That I marvel at the ability of the tok dalang to tell stories. Probably if you can do so, my God, I think you can change the world. Tok dalang is probably now is almost gone. No, wayang kulit is something that is almost, no. When was the last time you watched or you went to see the wayang kulit? Last year. That's very good. I had not seen wayang kulit for ages. Ages, I'm telling you, ages. Oh, thank you. Am I welcome here? If I'm welcome, I really like to move paces. Okay, so let's, like I said, I'm not going to take a long time because everybody is looking very tired. Okay, Siegel pointed out that multimodality is not new, of course, because we have the tok dalang who had the variation of voices. Probably you don't see, but we could see the puppet, right? Okay. It existed long before the internet. What will become of you guys if there is no internet? Answer me. What will become of you? Let's say one day we switch off the Wi-Fi altogether. Wow. What's going to happen?
Jobless.
You will what? Okay. So you upload your grades every day. Oh, that's very good. So you cannot update your status. I am in ELLIC now. Listening to this lady talking. You upload that. So what? Just think about. Well, I started off without internet. Right? That was many, many, many years ago, zillion years ago. I started off like when I was at the university, we didn't have email. Well, I communicated with my family when I was, when I did my first degree in Leeds University, I still wrote letters. And it took me like 2 weeks to get the reply from my mom. But now you don't even bother to say hi to your mom. You say hi to your mom in WhatsApp or maybe Facebook. I don't know. Yeah? So she cited illuminated manuscripts and picture books as example of hybrid text. When we had when you read your storybooks, do you read storybook with pictures or you like only words? It depends on what age you are, right? When you are this age, I like more pictures. Don't tell me now you like more pictures than words. No? Yeah, okay. So as we grow older, the words become it increases, right? Okay. Now, multimodality is all around us in our conversation, in television programs we watch on the internet, and even the book we read. Okay. Oh, oops. What happened? Okay. I pressed the wrong button. Okay, that's technology. So technologies have enabled a significant expansion of the range of media by which humans communicate, okay, all blah, 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 all this. But what I want to bring you to is the project that I did with my students. I think that is more interesting that. So more multimodality with the science. We have heard science just now, so probably I'm going to skip science, medium of communication. What I want to bring you is what I have, okay, cybernated storytelling. Okay, probably if you put this, you Google this, there's a red line, cybernated, because I coined this myself. Cybernated, okay, because it's the project that I did with my students were, it's multimodal. They had to use different types of, say, platforms. Okay, they had to use. I'll take you through of what they have to do. Now, they are going to tell stories. Okay, so this is the introduction to the teaching of literature in secondary school. That was the class that I took for this project. So what they had to do is to come out with a storytelling session using technology, right? So so they form a group, they select they can use any kind of stories. It's up to them. So I'm giving them the freedom. Okay, choose any story, but what was important is the process of completing the story. Okay, so they select a theme, probably first a theme, whether it's love story, or whether it's or the normal story with whatever. Okay, so and the project should be done in the classroom, also outside the classroom. Okay, very important, outside the classroom. So this was what I wanted to know and wanted to see, how they communicated outside the classroom, right? So, and then once they have done that, with all the discussion, they will have to start doing their stories, but of course they have to have the storyboards and a lot of consultations. They have to record, re-record, refine, and then finally upload their story. Of course, they are going to upload their stories on YouTube, okay? And let the parents, the families, the friends watch the story, okay? So that was and how do I evaluate? Okay, probably there is no time to tell you how they were evaluated. Probably if you want to know, I can tell you later. So this is the process. One is they are going to brainstorm. What stories, okay, probably they have a group already, or they have chosen their own friends, maybe. So then they brainstorm. They do the storyboarding. And then do the script writing, because they are going to storytell, and do a lot of rehearsing and all that, and consultation. Cool? So in-class activities were brainstorming, script writing, and all that, presenting in stages, right? And then they have at-home activities or outside classroom. So these are more interesting. Some groups did not. They said, we do not want to share what happened outside classroom, for various reasons. Okay. So now, and I was interested in what happened outside, because I want to know whether this project will actually, whether they they grew apart or whether they became closer. That was what I wanted to know. What happened, right? Okay, so that once that the task is given to them, what they had to do. Okay, so then I will ask them to share some of their they have their WhatsApp groups. Ask them to share some of their WhatsApp messages. There were reasons for this. Some of them, they only share the good ones. I know what else happened. I knew it. You know, why I wanted this, because I want to know the conversation they had. You know, they used a lot of emoticons. They used a lot of short forms. They used a lot of swearing. Youngsters. All right. So WhatsApp is one of them. And that probably this is one of the project. This is the final stage when they uploaded it onto YouTube. Okay, so this was the last one. So they use Vimeo, or some of them said, "Oh, it's so troublesome. We don't want to use Vimeo. We want to use other platform." Okay, go ahead. By all means, use. I said. And also they tweet. Let's say today they are not very happy with one or two members of the group, they will tweet something. Fed up, or, it's noon, I'm hungry, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to know what happened outside the classroom through all these platforms. Okay. Like I said, they were doing this. But most importantly, I want them to learn, to communicate with each other. Sometimes it surprises you when they were together 4 years, they didn't even know where their friends, where does your friend live? Oh, I didn't ask. I'm not bothered to ask. So I felt quite sad when you were together for 4 years and you know very little of your friend. So I hope with this project, they will become closer and they will know each other better. So that was, and motivate each other and all that. So students experience producing drafts, submitting for review, repairing, resubmitting again, back and forth movement is part of the growth and development. Okay, so I'm not too bothered about, let's say, we have done something like, for example, there are a lot of grammatical errors in my first draft. It's okay. So that's the use of, consulting each other, and that's where the swearing came in. You think you are great. You think your English is so good and stuff like that. And I think it's okay. That is the process. That is the platform for them to either is make or break. I'm going to stay with the group because I like this group. I'm not going to work with this person ever again. Maybe, right? Okay. So how do these processes help students improve? Because they are going to be teachers of English. And this project is their final project for literature, the teaching of literature. So how do this process help students improve the language communication skill? Do you think, with all this, do you think they improve? Yes, they did. They improved a lot. With all the consultations, with all the, some of them went further on asking even the author of a book. They went to professor of, such and such university. They went way beyond their means. And I think that's a good sign of their interest in, the process itself. So I think I have come to the end. Very short and sweet. So, right. So, if you want to see, probably I didn't put it here, So I can give you a link to the project they have uploaded on YouTube. Okay, I forgot to put the link there. Forgot. Okay, so if you are interested to know how they have, what's the product of the many, sleepless nights and squabbling, so finally it was good. And one of the stories were even presented in what we call the theater day. We had a English theater day, and one of the project was presented in there, and I was very happy with that. So I think with that, I end my sharing session with you. If you have any question, you can ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What an interesting thing. And I just got a phone call from the kitchen. The food is ready in a minute. Don't worry. No. I mean, because we come up to the question and answer sessions, I'm going to invite you to ask questions, but probably we're going to make agreement in 15 minutes only, right? Okay? All right. So, any question? Yes, 1, 2. Okay. Don't forget to mention your name and your affiliations.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Susanto from Universitas Pekalongan. I would like to ask to Mr. Selhammer that I am interested with your examples of how Indonesians place English words more dominance than Indonesians words, and then you assume that maybe Indonesians want to encourage the Indonesians that they are more civilized than Western, for example, like that. Okay.
Just purely speculation.
Yes, okay.
Partly an attempt at humor.
I
really don't know.
That's the point. That's the point of my question. The question is, do we need to validate it, or we just have a faith with our speculations? Because it's related to ideologies, right? And it is very difficult to reveal the ideology since it is unconscious. Some theories says like that, it is unconscious. Now, in your opinions, when it needs to be validated, how do we validate our assumptions? Or if we don't need to validate our assumption because it is ideologies, it is difficult to validate, just have a faith with your speculations. What's your opinions about that? Thank you.
I would say that, well, certainly we can all speculate. We just have to make certain that we are not making absolute claims with our speculations. Make sure they are clearly presented as speculations. Now, of course, with more ethnographic linguistic landscape research these days, now more and more researchers are making special attempts to do their best to try to interview the text initiators and try to get their take on the decisions they made, particular motivations. Of course, as you say, it might not be entirely conscious or reasoned as far as fully thinking through this decision or that decision. But yes, we can get the text initiator, text producers, actual take and their depiction of their own motivations, or maybe doing so would get them to reflect and actually shed some conscious attention on something that was never actually so consciously thought out when the text was being produced. But as far as the actual speculation, I see no problem with speculating as long as claims are not made and it's clearly presented as speculation.
Okay, next question.
Thank you. My question goes to Mr. Schellhammer. Actually, I'm wondering about the topic of linguistic landscapes. So I want to know more about, could you please tell us the grounded theories that we use when we do research about linguistic landscapes? Because, yeah, mostly it uses ethnographic approach. So, thank you.
Well, the more recent linguistic landscape uses more ethnographic approaches. But like I said previously, until relatively recently, it was mostly about very quantitative research, counting the instances, well, first demarcating a particular area that you are going to investigate, and then establishing rules like, I won't consider any mobile elements of the linguistic landscape. I won't go into the shops. I'll just count things that I can, instances that I can view from the street. Setting these kinds of specific rules, and then doing very quantitative counts and reporting the instances of this language and that language appearing in signage in this particular demarcated area. Very quantitative in order to make or to determine and speculate or make claims about the ethno-linguistic vitality of particular languages and what that indexes to the speakers of those languages, about the speakers of those languages. But more recently, though, like I said, with the ethnographic linguistic landscapes, it does now get more into ethnographic methodologies and actual interviews and spending time in the field, going into the shops, spend it, in most cases, spending up to a year or longer in the field, in the particular neighborhoods, exploring inside the shops and documenting lots of different instances of the linguistic landscape inside the shops, and all the artifacts of ethnographies. Now, but that's a relatively new development. Before it was all very quantitative. Now, not entirely actually though. I did talk about emplacement and the juxtaposition of the different elements. Very often with studies that would mostly still deal with quantitative counting of particular language instances, then they would sometimes zero in on particular instances and do analyses of the juxtaposition and size and placement of the different elements, usually for some sign that they would deem typical. Did I answer your question? No.
After this, probably you can discuss furthermore. Yeah, I'll invite another questioner. Yes, 1, 2, okay.
Thank you. My name is Arif from Universitas Pajajaran. I'd like to ask Dr. Idrus, when you're making endeavors to use multimodal presentations and activities, especially now, how do you make sure that the aspect inherent in the human body is not eliminated? You know, like, you know, the actual voice, gestures, when you cybernate a story, how do you make sure that those very essential, passionate, powerful elements of your body and things inside your body does not disappear and be replaced by something representative and not quite real? Thank you.
We got the point. Straight away.
All right. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. So I gave a lot of rooms for the students to be creative, right? So, and I said, and I told them that technology is technology, but we still need the human touch. I just said that. And some of them, they had the narrator of the story, and they have a little, when the little window where you can see the narrator. Some students went up to that extent. So we want you to see how we have used gestures, facial expression, half of your body can be seen. That little window you can add. So some of them use that, and some of them said, "Are you going to give extra marks for that?" I said, "Yes." Why? Because I asked you to be creative. Right? So to answer your question, yes, of course, I tell them time and time again that although technology rules your life, maybe 80% of your life, we still need the human touch. Like with all the flipped classroom in the world, you still need a teacher. Right?
Thank you. Last question, I suppose. Yeah?
Cek. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, my name is Dwi Ilmiani. I come from AKN Kota Pekalongan. I would like, I have a question, ma'am, for Professor Faiza Idrus. I am as a lecturer, and my student is, almost of them is as a worker. So they come worker, staff. Yeah, no, full-time. Some of them are full-time worker. And also, in my school, in my class activity, I asked them to make video and they have to upload on YouTube. But until now, I cannot find how to evaluate them because I just made them only one semester. Okay, maybe could you tell me how to evaluate that progress? Thank you very much.
What I did not share with you is the evaluation criteria. Right? So what I can say that at the beginning of the course, I told them, so you are going to be evaluated on this, and that. And finally, creativity, which, up to them to do. So since you said that your students are part-time, you have part-time students? What is it?
Yes. Some of them are part-time students.
So it's difficult for you to evaluate?
Yeah.
Right.
Because I guess because I just met with them only one semester and
right.
I put that final project in the last semester. So right. in the next semester I cannot meet them again.
Okay.
Like that.
Right. So what you have to do is to identify the criteria at the very beginning. Whether or not they fulfill that should be the evaluation. Like, for example, you have the content, you have the language input, for example, you have the vocabulary, you have whatever that you want, right? So if they do not fulfill that, then they are going to be penalized, right? So I don't know how to connect you said that they are part-timers, whether they are part-timers, whether they are full-timers, they have to equally be very, they have to collaborate and very, they have to be very determined to complete the project. So just tell them that this is important. I only see you once, and probably this is the first and last time I am going to see you. So you don't see them ever again after that.
Check. Okay. Because almost all my student is a staff from
right.
in a company, industrial company. So because almost some of them is...
Yeah, probably we can discuss that. But maybe I can share my experience with you.
I'm sorry because it's not a ping pong question and answer, so I'm afraid it's going to be private seminar. But anyway, it's a nice question and nice discussion, and I believe that from what they presented just now, the key is how creative we are as an English teacher to elaborate everything that we have in, around us, really. Yeah. So I believe that no more question, right? Because the kitchen is ready, they call me. And then for the last one, to end this session, let me quote one of Mark's Indonesian song that you sang last night. Potong bebek angsa masak di kuali, sesi ini luar biasa, mari kita beri tepuk tangan sekali lagi. So that's all, I'm going to see you in the next session. Thank you, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And would you please give applause to our speaker once more? And please remain on the stage because Mr. Dodi Mulyadi would like to hand a token to our speakers. Okay, thank you very much, and you all may return to your seat. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the parallel sessions held in different rooms, we would like to invite you to have break for prayer and lunch in the next room for 16 minutes from now. But before that, let me inform you that the result of full paper reviews will be announced on April 28, 2019 at 10 p.m. Once more, the results of full paper reviews will be announced on April 28, 2019 at 10 p.m. Thus, you can visit our website to check the announcement. And I also would like to inform you that the certificate of this conference will be distributed at the end of this event by submitting the form of evaluation to us. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, please be back to your own room for presenting your paper at 1:45 p.m. Thank you very much, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.